Before Creed, before Mason Dixon, before Tommy Gunn, before Ivan Drago, before Clubber Lang, before the franchise became what it became, there was just Rocky. Given how long the character has been around and how far away the story ultimately got from the origin, sometimes it's hard to remember just how different and amazing 1976 Rocky really is. Rocky, of course, is the story of Rocky Balboa, a lonely, down-and-out, never-was Philadelphia boxer who, at 30, is seemingly past his prime. He's reduced to brutal fights in tiny clubs for almost no pay. He's disrespected by fans, by promoters, and even Mickey, the owner of the gym he trains at, who kicks him out of his long-held locker and moves his equipment into a bag on Skid Row. He supplements his income by being muscle for a two-bit loan shark in the neighborhood whose driver even hates Rocky. His one bright spot is visiting Adrian, the painfully shy and equally lonely girl at the local pet shop, to tell her a new joke he makes up every day just to try and make her smile, to make any kind of personal connection, which never really happens. His only real friend in the whole world is the girl's alcoholic, abusive older brother, Paulie. And his apartment is a one-room shithole. Running alongside, we see that the world heavyweight champion is having a fight soon in Philadelphia, but his opponent has broken his hand and has to pass on the fight. The promoter is unable to find a suitable ranked opponent, and unwilling to give up the payday and sunk cost, the champ, Apollo Creed, decides that he'll pull an unknown white boxer out of Philly to challenge him. Ultimately, Creed chooses Rocky out of a list based on his nickname alone, the Italian Stallion.
Apollo Creed meets the Italian Stallion. Sounds like a damn monster movie.
Word gets to Rocky that the promoter of the Creed fight wants to talk to him, so naturally he assumes they need sparring partners for Creed. He shows up only to be offered a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, the shot at fighting Creed for the title. Amazingly, at first, he turns it down, knowing he has no shot. After the promoter talks him into it, Rocky embraces his shot to prove he's not just a worthless bum from the neighborhood. With the help of Adrian, Paulie, and his trainer Mickey, he prepares for the fight, ultimately deciding that his goal isn't to win, but to simply go the distance and prove his worth. Now that the Rocky Balboa character has been around for nearly 50 years and gone through so many transformations and outlandish stories, it's almost impossible to remember it all started with this little movie back in 1976, written by a nearly complete unknown young screenwriter and actor, Sylvester Stallone. Going back and watching interviews of Stallone at the time, he makes it clear that Rocky's story is his own personal journey. At the time, Stallone was a 30-year-old, nearly broke, struggling screenwriter and actor living in LA with a pregnant wife and no prospects. While he had had bit parts in a few things, he'd failed to get any real shot to prove his value in Hollywood. With the wolf at his door, as he put it, he sat down and wrote the screenplay for Rocky over the course of about 3.5 days, with the goal of creating a movie in which he could star, and began shopping it around. Studios loved it, but wanted no part of this unknown leading the movie. They were looking at guys like James Caan, or Ryan O'Neal, or Burt Reynolds, Gene Hackman, or Robert Redford. Anyone but the man who had written it himself with him in mind. After turning down offer after offer to sell his script and go away, the studio caved and gave him the only thing he really wanted, a shot. And Rocky was made for $960,000, which was paltry even then. I was lucky enough to have had my older sister bring me to this movie back in December of 1976 as a 6-year-old when it was released. Looking back, I obviously missed most of it at the time, focusing entirely on the boxing aspects. Having watched it countless times now since then as an adult, it becomes obvious the movie is barely about boxing. This is a quiet, thoughtful, and poignant love story about two desperately lonely people who everyone considers losers. Rocky is such a slow burn of a movie, plodding along quietly for much of the runtime. But at no point are you bored or wishing for any action to pick up. In addition to being a beautifully shot movie where any frame really could be pulled and examined as an amazing photograph, the performances are outstanding. Again, given where the franchise eventually went, many people are stunned to hear that Rocky was nominated for 10 Oscars. 10! In addition to having Burgess Meredith as Mickey and Burt Young as Paulie nominated in the Best Supporting Actor categories, both Talia Shire as Adrian and Stallone were nominated for their lead roles. Stallone was also nominated for Best Screenplay. And of course, Bill Conti's iconic Gonna Fly Now was nominated for Best Song. Now, unfortunately, at the 1977 Academy Awards, Rocky ran up against Network, which won 3 out of the 4 Best Acting Oscars and Best Screenplay. Despite that, Rocky would go on to win a Best Director Oscar for John Avildsen and Best Picture for producers Robert Chartoff and Irwin Winkler. The movie made for almost nothing, written by and starring someone no one had heard of who had basically bluffed his way into the movie, had beaten out Network, Taxi Driver, and All the President's Men for the Best Picture of the year. It would of course become the launchpad for Stallone's entire career as one of the greatest action movie stars of all time. And while I certainly loved most of that being a kid of the 70s and 80s, I still think the best thing he did was this quiet little fairy tale about the down-and-out boxer from Philly who just needed someone to believe in him. Sure, the story's great, but this is an actor's movie. There's a reason the 4 main players were all nominated. The sadness, the heartbreak, and the loneliness and pain they bring to screen is felt in every scene, and it's why the joys feel so earned. Each performance is so subtle and quiet. In a movie filled with incredible scenes, my favorite may be when Rocky returns to his pathetic little apartment after having gone to the arena to look at the ring the night before the fight. By this point, Rocky has been training like a madman, and everything is pointing to the big upset. Rocky sits down in his bed next to a half-asleep Adrian and says, "I can't do it. I can't beat him. I've been out there walking around thinking, who am I kidding? I ain't even in this guy's league. It don't matter because I was nobody before, but that don't matter either, you know, because I was thinking it really don't matter if I lose this fight. It really don't matter if this guy opens my head either, because all I want to do is go the distance. Nobody's ever gone the distance with Creed. You know, I can go that distance, seeing the bell ring and I'm still standing. I'm going to know for the first time in my life, see, that I weren't just another bum from the neighborhood." Yep, you want to see a grown-ass man cry? Sit next to me watching that scene. Or watch anything sitting next to Kevin Smith, apparently. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm about to spoil the end of a nearly 50-year-old movie. So if you've somehow managed to be sheltered and never seen the end of Rocky, be warned. I'll never get over how perfectly the final scene is shot. Not the fight, which is tremendous and one of the best boxing movies ever put on film, but just after the final bell at the end of the 15th round. Rocky and Creed are bloodied from the war they've fought and are clinging to each other to stay standing. Creed mumbles to Rocky, "There ain't gonna be no rematch." Rocky responds, "Don't want one." And as chaos breaks out in the ring as managers, promoters, reporters, etc. pour in, Rocky begins looking for Adrian, who has spent most of the fight back in the locker room. As he starts hollering for her, and she starts making her way to the ring, in the background, you can hear the decision of the fight being made public. You get a cut to the promoter who says that there's a split decision, but the focus is on Rocky and Adrian. Even further in the background, you hear the first set of scores go for Apollo, and you see through the crowd that Apollo jumps in reaction. You're brought back into a tight shot of Rocky surrounded by reporters as he's screaming for Adrian. And in the background, you hear the promoter, but you can't make out what he's saying. Just as Adrian makes it into the ring and she and Rocky are embracing and saying, "I love you," you barely hear way in the distance the announcer say, "And still the heavyweight champion of the world, Apollo Creed." There's no reaction to any of this from Rocky or Adrian. The movie ends with Rocky and Adrian in a tight shot hugging, ending with a still shot of Rocky's bloodied and bruised face, knowing he's accomplished what he set out to do. He's not just another bum from the neighborhood, and he's no longer loveless and alone. Look, I'm telling you, if over the years you've become disillusioned with the Rocky franchise, and I'll be doing a video about how those movies strayed from their origins at some point, or if you've somehow managed to never see the original 1976 movie that started it all, you have to do yourself a favor and sit down for not just one of the greatest sports movies of all time, but easily one of the best movies of the 1970s, and probably a top 20 movie for me overall. It's a masterpiece. Or, don't. I'm not the boss of you.